Hey residents of Meepletown, today we're looking at Paradise Lost, and the Water Witch has summoned a villain, and we are taking on the roles of legendary heroes trying to figure out who that villain is by traveling throughout the realms of the Water Witch. And when we find the villain, and when we discover which weapon we can use to destroy it, we will be the winner of the game. So let's get to the table and check out Paradise Lost. Alright, so here is the setup for Paradise Lost, and I think this is the first time ever in Meepletown history that I'm actually not able to fit the entire board on the screen, but that'll be okay. We're actually only going to play through one round, and so we won't even be up into these realms. But as you can see, the board is broken up into different realms. We're going to be starting off over in the ancient Cloud Mountains, and then moving on over to these different realms as we go along. Now we each have our own sheet, and I'll go ahead and show you these. So you've got at the top of your sheet, you have the weapons and the villains listed there. And the reason I have some of those checked off is because if you've ever played Clue, you know you're going to start off with some cards and check off the ones that you know are not it. Because at the end of the game, you're going to be looking in this envelope to see the villain, and then you're going to be seeing the weapon that's in there. So right now, we don't know what's in there. We just know the cards that we have, and I believe that we're ready to start. If you've played Takedo, this is going to be very similar, and you're going to know how this plays out. So you're going to be traveling, if you're the one in the back, excuse me, you're going to be going to these different locations. Now you can go up as far as you want, but you're not going to be able to go backwards and go to those spots that you want to be able to go back to. So the challenge is, how far do I go, getting the spots that I really want, but also not going too far ahead. The other thing that we need to think about, we didn't start off with this, we're each going to have a seeker cube, a coin, and mana. And those are going to be used for various things throughout the game, but right now the thing we need to pay attention to is we roll this die at the beginning of the game to show us that we have to pay a seeker cube at the end of this round if we want to ask the other player questions about what they have, what cards that they have available. So the Beowulf will be the red player, and Beowulf is, if you look on here, has a special ability that he can use at any time. That is that he's going to gain an extra mana or coin at the Bard's Tale location. So he's going to be wanting to go to the Bard's Tale to gain that extra resource, and then once per game he can draw an additional Truth Seeker card at a Truth Seeker location, which is these white locations here. You can draw one of those cards. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started, I believe, and let's see. I think what Beowulf wants to do right off the bat is go to this Black Swan spot. Now there are these Black Swan cards out here. Some of them are really good, some of them are really bad. And so Beowulf's going to take a card from that spot, and what's going to happen is we're going to increase the Water Witch Rage track by 1, which means we're just going to move up here. But when that happens, every time you get to the every other spot on here, you're going to flip over one of these Witch's Rage cards. And this one says that I lose a Seeker Cube, and then we discard. So the Black Swan card wasn't awful, but the card that I got from the Witch's Rage was not great for me. Again, there it is. Lose a Seeker Cube, and then discard that card. So now I'm without a Seeker Cube, which means I'm going to have to figure out a way to get a Seeker Cube in order to be able to find out extra information. But also Seeker Cubes are very important as you find out the villain's hideout, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Now it's on to Billy Goat Gruff's turn, and this is the card for Billy Goat Gruff. Also, each character has their own miniature. I can show that on there. So you've got the Billy Goat Gruff miniature. And Billy Goat Gruff ignores Water Witch Rage card effects, which is really, really good. Seems to be potentially maybe overpowered. Then once per game, you're going to gain 1 Seeker Cube for free, which is not a super powerful action, but it can be a good ability in a bind. So what the Billy Goat Gruff wants to do is, let's see, move up to some of these spots to potentially get some more resources. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that mana and coins at the end of the game are going to be very important to determine who's going to be the first player to be able to guess who the villain and the weapon used to destroy that villain. That being said, I think I'm going to skip over the... No. Billy Goat Gruff's going to go to the shrine, which is going to allow him to turn in a coin and grab 2 mana. Whoop! Excuse me, I left that left that card up there. It's a little bit more difficult when it's just me doing the video. I did want to show this though. Each player has, I showed the back side of this. It's actually just one piece of paper, but on the other side, I tend to fold it in half so the other player can't see. You're going to see what the different abilities at those locations are. So that's helpful to know as well. But that is Billy Goat Gruff's turn, and on to Beowulf's turn, who, excuse me, really needs to be able to get some Seeker Cubes. And the only way that they're going to be able to do that is by going to the Marketplace. Now, the Marketplace allows them to turn in 3 mana or 3 coins for a Seeker Cube. That being said, another good potential way is to go to the Truth Seeker spot, and some good things can happen here. So let's just flip over this card. This says I'm going to gain 1 Seeker Cube, 3 mana, or 3 coins. Now in this case, I really need mana and coins to be able to buy Seeker Cubes. But obviously if I'm able to get a Seeker Cube, I'm just going to take that. So that's exactly what Beowulf needed to happen. All right, now Billy Goat Gruff is going to... really would like to be able to get one of these scroll cards. I'll explain what those are in just a minute, but figures why not go ahead and just go to the arena, which will allow him to turn in a mana for 2 coins, which will be helpful again throughout the game. Gaining a lot of resources is not a bad thing. And then we'll immediately get to go again. And when he does that, he's going to go to this, to the Ice Mage Tower to get a scroll. And that's going to cost 1 mana. It's going to take a scroll card. Now, what these do, these are different, have different benefits on them, but one is potentially if the scroll die is rolled on here, you'll have to turn in a scroll to be able to gain information. The other big benefit is that at the end of the game, when you have a full set of scrolls, whether from the fire, from the fire or the ice, you're going to automatically know either the villain or the weapon. So if you have all 5 ice scroll cards, you're going to know what the weapon is, and you don't even have to look at your sheet or know. It's just a default, you know what the weapon is. Now, if you have a full set of both of those, you don't have to have any information. You'll just automatically know what those are if you're the first one to guess. Now, getting both sets of those is pretty unlikely, but I'm going to go ahead and take one, and that will help with that race. Now, that's kind of exactly what Beowulf wanted to happen, because now he can jump over and go to that Bard's Tale spot, which is going to give him a coin and a mana. But if you remember, his special ability is that he can gain an extra coin or a mana. And I think he's just going to go ahead and take the mana and potentially be able to trade those in at the market later on to gain even more Seeker Cube. Now back over to Billy Goat Gruff, who thinks, well, I'd really like to be able to gain that Fire Scroll. However, I don't have a mana, so I'm just going to jump over and go to that Black Swan card spot, which is not good. Again, this is big risk, big reward. In this case, it was not a big reward. It is losing 1 Seeker Cube, which is not exactly what he wanted to happen, but it is what it is. That's what happens sometimes when you take that risk. And Beowulf thinks, well, I would like to go ahead and take this Fire Scroll card, since I do have that extra mana, throw that up there and get this. Now, one thing I neglected to mention is that some of those cards will have the Witch's Rage symbol on there, meaning you have to move up on the track. And that doesn't happen in those first sets of cards, but it can potentially happen later on, which means you just would randomly not get that card, but also you would move the Witch's Rage up a notch. Still Beowulf's turn, and Beowulf would like to go to the market, but doesn't really have anything to help him there. He can turn in 2 for 1, and also gain a Seeker Cube, but I think what I'm going to do is just jump up here to this Truth Seeker spot. This says that you can Ask a question as if you were an oracle. No player has immunity from this question. Now, this kind of gets us to the end of the round to show you how this works. But what's going to happen is, without having to pay anything, this player is going to get to ask a question. Now, normally, if I understand this correctly, I know normally you would have to pay this cost to the player. From that card, I gather you don't have to pay that resource. And so what Beowulf is going to do is ask Billy Goat Gruff 2 questions about the items that are listed on their sheet. Now he looks at a sheet and he thinks, okay, here are the ones that I have that are checked off. And so I can ask a question, can the villain be killed with flaming arrows or hunter's axe, for example? And I think that's what I'll ask. Can the villain be killed with a flaming arrow or hunter's axe? And then what the player would do, look through their cards, and if that's not the case, if the player cannot answer that question, then they would say, I don't have an answer for that. And so then I could write down those notes that they didn't have an answer for the question that I had asked. If they do know, they just show one of those cards to show what they have on there, and you can check that off. But in this case, the Billy Goat Gruff character does not know that information, and so that did not help Beowulf one bit. Back over to Billy Goat Gruff, who thinks that they would like to go ahead and probably go to the shrine. That's going to allow them to turn a coin in and gain 2 mana. Again, just kind of building up resources. Their problem is they don't have a seeker cube to be able to ask the question at the end of the round. Now back over to Beowulf. Beowulf likes being able to get those extra resources. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Billy Goat Gruff's turn. And Billy Goat Gruff is going to go here to the wild spot. Now when they do that, they can take any of these spots as long as a character is not guarding one of these. So in this case, they cannot take the Truth Seeker spot, even though there's one available. It's the other one's being taken by Beowulf. So they're gonna take that spot and take the second of the ice scroll, and they're going to take one of the random 2s, and in this case they lucked out and does not have the witch's symbol on there, so they'll be able to keep that. Now they've got 2 out of the 5 that they need to be able to complete that objective. Now on to Beowulf's turn. Beowulf is going to go ahead and just take the coin and the mana. And again, remember, his special ability allows him an additional one of each of those. So we'll take that. Now he's going to jump to the end. Now this is going to be really helpful for him because the first player there is going to get a coin and a mana. So Beowulf is really racking up on the resources right now and is setting himself up for a good position. Billy Goat Gruff, not as much, but they're going to go ahead and go there. The second player gets a coin or gets a mana. In this case, they're going to take 1 mana. And now we're ready for the end of the round. So what's going to happen is we are going to first, the last player to get there is going to draw one of these clue tiles and place it. Now, at the beginning of the game, each player has been given a hideout. And what you're trying to do is get your hideout to be the one that the villain's going to be at. So in this case, Soulless Swamp is where the hideout that Billy Goat Gruff wants to find. And so what they're going to do is draw a clue tile that's going to lead the clues to Soulless Swamp. In this case, he just drew this one, which is an X. And that means that this is not going to be the location for that. Now, whoever has the most clue tokens pointing to their location is going to be the one that is going to get the extra bonus at the end of the game. Just know that if your villain, the villain hideout points to your hideout, that means you're going to be the first one that's going to be able to guess at the end. You're also going to be able to ask another question or draw one of the undrawn oracle cards, because you're not necessarily going to go around the entire board. If this Witch's Rage track gets to the very end, you're actually going to be able to jump, you're all going to jump down here and then have that last battle against the villain. So that's how that plays out. Normally, if that doesn't happen, then you're going to go all the way around the board until you get over here to figure out who the villain and the weapon are. So that's how this works. They're going to place that there. Now we go back and forth, and they can place, take a cube, and one seeker cube allows them to be able to play a tile from their hand or draw one here. Now, Beowulf would like to do this. Their location is at the ancient Cloud Mountains. Again, that's secret information. So they're going to take this and place this over top of here, and that is going to point to their location. That's what they want to happen. Now, no player has any secret cubes left, and so they won't be able to do anything else. What would happen next, and let's actually go ahead and say that Beowulf did not pay to do this. They're thinking, I'm going to slow play that, maybe try to get my villain to show up later on. What they could do next is, after they're going to take this card and flip it over, so everyone's going to be able to see that the magic wand is not the item that they're looking for, okay? And so everyone goes on their list and they check that one off to show the magic wand has been seen. Now, everyone can pay this resource listed on the die, and in this case, it's a seeker cube. So Beowulf, again, is going to ask 2 questions, just like he asked before. Could the villain be the Big Bad Wolf or Grendel? They're going to look through their cards, and let's see. They do have the Big Bad Wolf card, and so they're going to take that and secretly show that other player the Big Bad Wolf card. Then they're going to check that off their list. Now, next thing we do is we're gonna clear out the cards that are here. If there's any Witch's Rage cards there, then we're gonna move up 1 on the track. Now we're ready to start all over. We roll the die, and this one goes into the next location, showing that you have to pay a coin to be able to ask that question. Now, that gives you enough idea of the gameplay. Let's look at the art and components. The board is gigantic. I'll go ahead and say that. The board is huge. Now, this is the player mat. The board is just as big, but I do think it's so beautiful. So you can see it's very colorful. The mana pieces are huge. Just nice mana pieces on there. You've got these giant seeker cubes. Now, there's nothing super special about the coins. They're just cardboard coins, but I still think they're good. Then you have these miniatures for the characters, which I think are really cool. And yeah, I think the production in this one is pretty fantastic. Now, and most everything is pretty clear, but I will say on the board, especially if it's your first time, the way that you have the symbols listed on your sheet don't exactly match up color-wise with the board. So you have yellow as the marketplace spot, but on your sheet it actually looks a little brown. It looks more like the Bard's Tale, and the Bard's Tale looks almost like this peach color, but it doesn't look like that on the board. So it does have symbols there to represent those different locations, but just know that it's not perfect with those colors. But once you play through, it becomes pretty clear. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. All right, now on to the gameplay. I think the gameplay is fun. There are some things that I really enjoy about this thing, about this game, some things that can be fairly frustrating, and let me talk about those now. So the things that I enjoy, I like the Takedo feel of this game, where you're moving around to different spaces on the board, and the timing of it is very important because you don't want to go too far ahead and miss out on spaces that are in that you would have passed up, but you also don't want to be too slow because there are some benefits from reaching that oracle spot first. And I really enjoy that piece of the gameplay. I like deduction games, so I enjoy that piece as well. I will say that how you discover that is a little more clue-like than I think that I would like. There's a lot of randomness to the card draws, and the swung cards are taking the risk, and so you know that some good things could happen, some bad things, but it is pretty random, or it is random, as well as from the Truth Seeker cards. I think the biggest problem that I have with this game is the fiddliness of it. I think that it's some things are kind of intuitive, right? The Takedo piece of the game, and like how you're trying to figure out, looking at the oracle cards and things like that. I think some of those are intuitive, but then you have things like this, like the villain's hideout, and I enjoy that part of the game, but it's also kind of fiddly. And when you're explaining it to somebody who's never played the game before, it can be kind of tricky because, one, you need to have those seeker cubes to build that up. But when you're playing through the first time, even though you hear that, you might not register how important seeker cubes are in searching out that villain's hideout. So I think that can be kind of frustrating. The other thing is, again, going back to if you haven't played this game a lot, knowing why, like, why am I picking up these coins? Why am I picking up this mana and seeker cubes? Why is this important at all? And you can explain that, and some of that's intuitive because you know, okay, I'm going to have to pay this to be able to ask questions at the end of the round. But to know how important it is at the end of the game to be able to have those pieces, to be able to have first dibs, to discover, to make the first guess on who the villain and the weapon is. So some of that is not very intuitive, but I like how this game is, it takes two games that are pretty simple, right? Tokaido and Clue are pretty simple games, and I enjoy that it mashes those up because I think that this game could be one that you could introduce to somebody who really enjoys Clue and really enjoys deduction games. And so I'm not going to say that this is a gateway game, and I don't think that way at all. I think it's too fiddly to be a gateway game. But I think if you have somebody who's kind of dipped their toes into Tokaido and has played some of these easier games, this could be a next step up game, but the fiddliness could be enough to frustrate somebody. So I guess one thing you need to keep in mind is you can't just play this one game one time and figure out the way this game plays. You're going to need to play it multiple times, at least through one time, to get an idea of, oh, this is why I'm gathering up these resources, and kind of thinking ahead towards the game's end. I think it's very important. But overall, I still like this game. I was actually pretty surprised by this game. I'm going to give this one a 6.5, which I think is, I think this is a fun game. It's not one that I'm going to want to play all the time, but I do think that when it makes it to the table, I'll have an enjoyable time. And for people like my wife and myself, I enjoy deduction games. I think this one is fun. The problem will be is if you haven't played it in a while and you go to pull it out, to think through, okay, how does the hideout pieces work, these clue tokens, and exactly what am I doing trying to get these coins and mana? Why is this important? So I think some of that can be kind of frustrating, but then once you get the hang of it, it's fine. So anyway, that's a 6.5 for me. I enjoy this game. I was surprised by it. If you like deduction, if you like Tokaido, I think definitely take a chance on this one. I think you might really enjoy it, if you can get past a little bit of that fiddliness. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can reach out to us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. That's at Meepletown Games. You can go to our website, meepletowngames.com, where you can see all of our content from our podcast, from our YouTube channel. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button for our channel. And that's going to do it. If you also like to get in touch with us on Board Game Geek Guild number 3407, you can do that. Thanks for coming down to Meepletown. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at Meepletown Games, and connect with us on the Meepletown Guild, Guild number 3407, at BoardGameGeek.com, and also subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel. And until next time, thanks for coming down to Meepletown.